Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Care 93.5 FM, broadcasting from the Boulevard Baptist Church, located at 2 Washington Boulevard, Kingston 10. October was Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and almost everyone knows someone who has had or is suffering from breast cancer. No one wants to hear that they have breast cancer. This morning, I have with me my special guest, Mr. Gary Harris, and no, he does not have breast cancer. His first wife, Michelle, died as a result of breast cancer some 7 years ago. We often don't take into account the effects cancer has on members of the family, and as such, Gary's here to share his story with us this morning. Welcome, my friend, and thanks for agreeing to share.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
All right, Gary. So, Gary, tell me now, when you first heard that Michelle had breast cancer, were you devastated? Take us back to that moment.
I think it was a bit devastated because growing up in the 70s, you never really encountered anybody are you hearing the word cancer? You know, you heard of people dying of high blood pressure and those things. You never heard the word cancer then. So it was a shock. It was a shock, to be honest with you.
It was a shock. So tell us, what did you do? What did she do when you heard? Was it like the end of the world to both of you?
No, me and Michelle were very level-headed from the get-go. So the first thing that we decided to do was we sat and said, how do we address this? What's the first thing to do? And that's what, we had to act immediately because, as you know, my mother was a nurse.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so the first thing we did, we had a word with her. And she basically told us, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. So we went to the first person who knew who could help, which was my mother. And she kind of directed us. So we didn't panic or anything because we didn't at that stage know how serious it was. So we just wanted to act and see what was the best thing to do initially. Because really and truly, you don't know what to do. Even if you have all the money in the world, you still are going to be confused and running around not knowing what to do.
Yes, true. So it was good that you had your mom as a
Right.
support system there. So talk to us how important it is to have a support system and a good support system too. Did that make much of a difference?
It is the most important thing, whether cancer, stroke, heart attack is the most important thing to have support, whether through a spouse, family member, or friends. Because the first thing you do whenever it is yourself or your loved one, you would want to speak to someone who you can have confidence in, who can say, boy, Gary, what can I do to help? How can we help? That's a very comforting thing to hear. How can we help? And that's something that we had in our corner. We had a lot of persons who were willing to help. So it's very, very important. You don't want to be alone in times like those. Never, ever.
Something I remember from that, because let me declare that Gary and I we're friends from high school, not primary school. And Michelle also, we went to Merle Grove. But to tell you the truth, though, Gary, when I, heard and everything, I was more concerned about Michelle.
Yes.
As the case is, nobody really think about you, the spouse,
Right.
and anything like that. It was after she passed that you really came, into my thoughts when I saw how devastated you are, and then when we chatted, but really throughout the whole time, I never gave a thought as to, are you okay? How are you coping? So did you find that common with most persons?
Yeah, I think so. I think the persons were very, very close to me. Because, even though we grew up together, from, high school days, work and sometimes career takes us apart sometimes. But whenever we come back together, it's like we come right back to where we were.
Yes.
So it's not like we were connecting at the time, but there were a lot of friends around who basically, especially the women, they weren't thinking about me really. they were thinking about Michelle. Because, Michelle, she was a very lively,
Yes.
bubbly person. So, I mean, to hear her have to go through this was, I said, boy, how is Michelle going to handle this? No, not me. Because I am not an emotional person, so I don't show emotion. So people were not too concerned about me at the time.
And it's natural, because you're not the one, who was ill, right?
Right.
However, you had to be the caregiver and the one running, running with her to the doctor, and so it really, I'm sure, took had a toll on you.
Right. And it was especially hard for me too because I had lost my mother the year before.
Uh-huh.
And I was basically the only child that was dealing with her illness and, having to bury her. So to come from my mother's death to hear this now was a big blow for me personally. And remember that just a little before that, I had done back surgery. So I was going through a lot personally, but I had to kind of put all of that aside to deal with the things in front of me, because you always have to have somebody who is level-headed, who can handle a crisis. You don't want to fall apart in a crisis. Everybody can fall apart in a crisis.
Right.
Somebody have to hold them head up and say, no, this has to be done.
That's so true.
And I'm always a person that's there to do that.
Right. So never thought of, all of those things that you had your mom who had died the year before, and, you had your surgery. No, the entire focus was on, her,
Right.
what's happening with her, and, how is she going to get through this. So it's really important, the person who is going through the illness needs the support, but those around also need to be supported. And it's not a deliberate thing, it's just natural.
It's natural,
that
yeah.
we don't, think that you need the support. It's just a person who is ill that needs the support. And the support for you, the stronger you are, you're more capable of assisting
Right.
the person who is ill. Because, as you say, if you fall apart, then that person is depending on you.
And they will see it,
Yes.
They will see it,
Yes.
Yeah, they will see it.
Yes, that is so true. So that is something that we need to look at, support for the family members and the caregivers. So tell us a little about the process, what happened, along the way, treatment and all of that.
Well, I don't want to say good thing, but it turned out to be a good thing. I had two friends who had lost their wives to breast cancer before that,
Oh.
and I saw how they handled it. And so I knew that we had to move quickly. And to be honest with you, Michelle was a trooper as well, because when we found out that she had it, within 2 weeks, she's scheduled to have her breast removed. I mean, it wasn't even a question for her.
Or she didn't
No, she never hesitated.
hesitate.
She just moved right away. And I think that is when the real emotions start to hit, when you lose a body part, either through surgery or accident, or because remember this, you grow up with these things,
Yes.
so you have an attachment to them,
Oh my.
So, and especially for a woman, your breast or your hair or whatever is a very integral part of your femininity. So you don't want to lose it, all right? So to lose it that way, but for her to act the way she did and how speedily was something I admired back then, because she didn't even hesitate once.
So how did you feel about that? That, I mean, she's not going to, did you think about it or saying, oh my, how is she going to
That was
look?
not even on my thought at the time. The idea was just to see if we can, because I mean, you grew up in a time when you have more information at your hands. I said before, grew up in the 70s, so we didn't have all the radio station, we didn't have internet and those things.
Oh,
so,
Gary, you grew up in the 70s.
Cheryl, let's not go there. Yeah, so we never had the information that we have now. So you know then that people could do breast replacement and you could do different things, but that was not even on your mind. You just wanted to make sure the person could go through it, and you also knew that early detection, right? Early detection can save a life, and a lot of
Yes.
women who would have had done removed a breast or two. Some people live for many years
Yeah,
after and
that's true.
actually died from natural causes and not from the breast
And not
cancer.
from the
So
breast cancer.
we had hope that if with early detection we could beat this thing. So that was really was on my mind. I'm not sure what was going through her mind, but at the time, but that was going through my mind at the time.
Okay. So did our all I was reading an article in the Gleaner. It was talking about intimacy. So did the whole issue of her illness affect your intimacy of how you saw her? Was she less attractive or anything like that to you?
Not at all, I mean,
Or what did you see her as being more delicate, that it's somebody that you can't be, intimate with because she's ill?
well, as I said before, it was a process. So after you do remove the breast, you have to recover physically from that surgery, and then the progress is that you need to now start the treatment for the cancer itself. So we got referred to a doctor to start doing the treatment, which is the chemotherapy treatment, and that in itself is another thing, right? So we had to go through that process, and of course, I didn't know what chemotherapy was. I thought it was like a radiation. I didn't know it was an actual liquid that you mix and you inject it into your bloodstream. I did not know.
I found that out a couple years ago
Yes,
too.
right.
Right.
And depending on the kind of cancer you have, they call it like a cocktail.
Yes.
So they mix it depending on your situation. So I was learning all of that at the same time, and then learning now that I have to be with her during the actual chemotherapy treatment, which can be long and it's very tedious because it's not something they rush. It takes its time. It's almost like drip.
Yes,
It takes a while,
realize
and
that.
so you have to be there. And of course, what comes after that. The hair starts to fall out, and Michelle was devastated about the hair loss. To be quite honest with you, that threw her off, and she, of course, as I said before, with women, the breast and the hair is a very important part of their femininity. So when they lose it, I think she was more worried that if I would find her more attractive or less attractive or whatever during that time. And to be honest, when she started, when she lost her hair and she recovered from the surgery and she started going out, she was wearing wigs. And I hated the wigs. I hated it. And I said to her, when after wearing a wig though, I said, Miss, wear hair ball. I said, just get some big earring, man, and get some pearl and do an African look. Because I made her know that I was not affected by how she looked. I said, just wear your hair bald. I don't have a problem with it. And she actually started wearing her hair bald. She just went bald. But it took her a while to get there. I remember we went to, I think it was Rio, one Christmas Eve. Because we normally go to a hotel at the end of the year to bring in the new year. And she was there in her pearls and her shadow and the thing hat on her head, and she was bald and everything. And we had a great time, And when her hair started to grow back and everything, you remember she started having her hair was low at the time?
Yes.
And I said, I don't grow her hair no higher
Yes,
than that.
look
Make it
really
stay right
beautiful.
Because I loved her hair when it was short, because I'm not into long hair. So it never bothered me one way or another. So I loved her hair when it was short. So I had no problem whether it was bald or short or whatever. But I hated the wigs. I never liked the look of it. And I had to support her and tell her that I do have a problem.
Right.
So I think that was very comforting for her.
Yes, and that's important because, as you said, as women, we are, conscious, and even though we know that you love us, we're still, conscious that, oh my, we don't have the hair anymore and the breasts and things. I wonder, how does he see me now? So
Yeah.
that was quite good for you to reassure her that,
Right.
and I can really test that she really looked beautiful and thing with the low,
Yeah.
the low.
I thought that was shut. All the years I was with her, when she had a low hair at that time, that was the best she looked to me. You know, I really love that look.
Right. So let's talk about, so how did it affect you financially? Were you guys prepared for this? Because I remember you saying we didn't think about, things like cancer, critical illness. Those were for people in their 60s, 70s about to die. So were you guys prepared for this?
We were prepared to a point. As I said before, I mentioned earlier that me and Michelle were always very level-headed. And so we always know the importance of having funds in place in case anything happens. So we did have like a policy for the critical health.
Oh,
we did have that in place. So
critical
it
illness
didn't
insurance.
prevent us from acting right away. So we had funds in place for that. What we were not prepared for was the severity of the actual cancer itself, because she had a very aggressive strain of the cancer. What threw us off financially was because it was so severe, she had to start getting a treatment every 3 weeks that costs almost $300,000.
Wow.
And we were not prepared for that at all. And it did affect us. I mean, we were doing pretty well, but you will know whether you're doing well or not when you get these things. These things happen to you. When these things happen to you, you realize how fast your money can just disappear.
Yes.
And it practically disappeared. Yeah. And we, as I said before, we had a lot of support. We actually had I was able to put on a fundraising event. I don't know if you remember.
Oh yes,
at
the deck. Yes, and yes.
Because of of the support I've had, I mean, because I do work with people in music and different things, I was able to put on a very good event at the deck. We got a lot of support, and we raised quite a bit of funds. So we didn't have to sell the house then because it was heading there.
It was heading
there. So we were able to raise quite a bit of funds to maybe pay about 3 or 4 or 5 of the treatments. And I remember one of our employers gave us also a very big donation at the time, because Michelle was loved by everywhere she worked.
Yes.
So we got a lot of donations at the time. So it did help us to stave off any little.
Selling the house.
Oh yes, because that was coming in. I said to her, Michelle, if I have a sell house and get one room, that we have to do. You understand me? Because you have to live, right? So we were planning to do that, but that kind of helped us. And sadly, she never lived much longer after that, and sadly.
Yes. I asked if you were prepared, but Gary, sometimes you can never ever be prepared, because and this is what sometimes, no matter how much funds you have, as you said, the cancer was aggressive, and it eats away. It eats away at your finances. It does.
Yeah, it does.
It does, and that sometimes cause other issues.
Yeah, it can cause friction between yourself and your spouse.
Right, some resentment and.
Yeah, all kind of things can happen at that time, So, I said, luckily for me and Michelle, we knew each other from high school, so we had a very good friendship. We shared everything, and we were very open with each other about everything. So we were able to weather the storm, as it were, back then. But I'm telling you, as you know, we grew up together. Not having enough funds to do something when it is important can be devastating. When you think you're all right, all of a sudden, you probably have a $6 or $7 million put on and say, yeah, man, you're nice. All of a sudden, it's gone. That's what happened. It just went.
Right. Because to do the surgery and then the treatment, and
it just went.
You recall where you had to get some drugs from abroad.
Yes.
And that was US dollar.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, the money that you thought was going to be, you could add on to it and you could maybe retire fairly comfortably. It just went. I'm telling you. like nothing was there. Just gone. So people see me driving every day and think I'm all right, and
They
then I know
don't
what
know.
going.
So
I know what going.
that's the whole point. And then after she passed and thing, most people would have said, okay, that's it, you know?
No,
It,
sir.
it, it, it ends, and sometimes for you, that's just the beginning.
For
'Cause
me, it was the beginning.
right, 'cause it's like you have to start all over.
Yep,
Pick
yep.
up again, both emotionally, financially.
Yep. And I was basically, I wasn't broke, but I mean, I never really have anything at the time, But I was still working and
Yes.
everything, so money was coming in, but not. I was basically in a vulnerable state then, so I had my own personal critical health policies. So if anything would have happened to me then, I would have maybe had enough money to start something. So I had that, but there was nothing in case of an emergency. Sometimes you have friends who need help too, and you can't even give them money.
Yes.
You don't have that. I wouldn't have not been in a position to help anybody at the time. Not in a position at that time. So I had to basically start over.
So preparation is so, important, although we might think that these things, won't happen happen to us, because I really, when this cancer thing, started coming, I said, oh no, I'm not, I'm not going to get that. But actually, though, I made sure I, got critical illness, I don't think I have enough still, but, I made sure. And I remember when she was going through her thing, you made sure that you top up on.
Oh, yes,
on
I did that.
What you had.
Yes,
just
I maxed out my I maxed it out. And you helped me through that process as well.
Yes, you remember you called and said, Cheryl, come now.
Yes.
Yeah, so sometimes it's just going through, because we have heard stories, and thing and people's experience, but sometimes, it's when we experience, for ourselves that we really see how these things can really affect and devastate and destroy, families financially and all of that. Because as you said, you had to actually start all over.
You had to start all over, yeah.
You actually had to start all over. Well, Gary, I want to thank you, really. I appreciate you sharing, your story, and you have started over. You're doing well. The Lord has blessed you and continue to bless you.
Yes, I also have another very, I'm blessed to have two good wives.
That I keep calling.
You keep calling Michelle.
But I must attest that she's a lovely woman, because she just she doesn't let it affect her.
Yeah.
But even though her name is on the tip of my tongue, I just continue calling her Michelle.
Don't worry, I slip up sometimes. Well, I try to whisper it, I don't know.
Yes,
I'm getting better at it now.
Yes,
I'm getting better at
keep
it now.
calling Yvette, Michelle, but she's such a wonderful person. So, as I said, the Lord has blessed you. So, how did your faith and thing help you through this? Because I know that you're a man of God.
Boy, I tell you, when because I came home and she was basically dead. So I came home and saw her dead. I was able to call my friends, who were all my church family, and they were the first responders then, that very same night. And they basically helped me through that. It has never really affected me. It has actually brought me closer to God, to be quite honest with you. Because let me tell you something. I don't know what young people know. I mean, I guess when we're younger, we're going to parties and fetes, we're never thinking about death or getting sick, because you think you're invincible, you're going to live forever. But one thing I can tell you is that when you get older, when you get to a certain age, if you're married, you need to have a conversation like this. Sit down and have a conversation about what would happen if, what you're going to do if something happens in your life. How do you prepare for this? have a will. These are things very, very important that you need to have in place. But if you don't have these conversations, and it's, I just said before, it's experience that brings up these things, because you don't really know until it happens to you. And even though you see parents, you may have parents who have died before and they go through it, you don't know the nitty-gritty of what they go through, or they pass through when you try to help the process. Either the mother and father was left behind, but you don't know what they go through financially. So you now have to start. If you have a good relationship with your parents, you can maybe know. I mean, I had a good relationship with my parents, so I knew what was going on. And that's why I started doing what I did, because I said you cannot be unprepared. But then I said before, you can never have enough. So it is good to have that conversation with your spouse or yourself.
Yes, true.
Yeah, I say, say anything can happen. You need to have a conversation with yourself and make sure that you put things in place. So no matter how much money you think you're making now, make sure you put on like something and prepare yourself or your loved ones, because you do not want to leave your loved ones behind holding the bag. Because I tell you, it is very tough. You have to be prepared financially. You have to make sure you find ways to save money and be prepared. You have to. You can't just spend everything and go just like that. You can't do that, because you never know what can happen. Never know.
So true, so true, so true. So true. Well, Gary, I really want to thank you for coming and having this conversation, so we see things from, a different perspective, how it, affects, a spouse, the person is behind and has to, go on. So I really hope our listeners got some enough food for thought from this and will take some advice and prepare yourself, and let us support the spouse, the children, the family, when, there is a member, going through, whether it's breast cancer or any form of illness, right? It's not just the person who it affects.
It affects everybody.
It affects everybody. It takes a toll.
It does.
On everybody. So let us give them some support. Thank you, Gary.
Yes, it was my pleasure being here.
And thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for joining us again on CARE 93.5 FM, broadcasting from the Boulevard Baptist Church. Have a blessed morning. Thank you again.